What is up, fellas? We are back for another UFC predictions video. This time for UFC Vegas 89, UFC Fight Night, Ribas versus Namajunas. Another kind of slow card for this weekend, fellas. But it's one more step on the journey, on the Trail of Tears to get us to UFC 300. Um, Last weekend was a bit of a nightmare. I've reconvened. I've regathered my thoughts, and today we're gonna lock the fuck in. I got some underdogs. All my picks are actually right here. You can't really see them because you can see the glare of my monitor and the whiteboard. Normally I erase these, but they're just up there for right now because I just didn't feel like erasing them. Also, any new subs, you go on the board. That's my dude Jonathan Davila. Be like him. Be like him. That's my friend right there. Uh, but yeah, let's jump into this weekend's card. So let's go. Kicking us off at heavyweight. Uh, for those keen-eyed of you on my whiteboard, I don't know if you can see it for the glare, but you can see I have Mick Parkin and I have fat written next to him because he's fat. I am going with Mick Parkin to win this fight here over Muhammad Usman. I think Muhammad Usman does have a path to victory over Mick Parkin in this fight, and that is to lay on top of him and breathe and do nothing. Um, But in recent fights, especially last weekend, we've learned that even if you ragdoll someone for 4 minutes and 30 seconds, if they land one significant strike on you, they will be gifted the round. So if your base is wrestling and lay and pray, I don't know if I want to pick you anymore. Especially because I think Mick Parkin, he has generally decent takedown defense, or I think he'll have it early at least for like the first round and a half. I think he'll be able to defend Muhammad Usman's takedowns pretty well. I think on the feet here, it's a wash. Muhammad Usman does have a little bit of power in his hands, but I think Mick Parkin's a much better boxer, and he throws a lot cleaner strikes, a lot straighter, and a lot faster. I think Mick Parkin is going to land the better shots of Muhammad Usman here. I don't think Muhammad Usman has a very good chin either. Um, I don't know if Mick Parkin's going to finish him, but I think Mick Parkin's going to do enough damage in this fight to get himself a decision win over Muhammad Usman, barring 15 minutes of dry humping on the floor. Moving up to flyweight, Igor Severino. He's listed as Igor De Silva on other websites. I'm not used to seeing the Severino name versus Andre Lima. This is a pretty interesting fight to me, fellas. These are both, I believe, contender series guys. I remember Andre Lima a lot. I had to go back and look at Igor De Silva. I'm just going to call him De Silva because that's what I've seen his name as through all of my tape and stuff. I think this is a pretty close fight. I'm going with Andre Lima because I think he's got a little bit more experience against better guys. I think his win over his opponent on the contender series was better because I think he fought a better guy. I believe the guy was like 14-1 or something that Andre Lima fought, and he made him look pretty easy. And I think Igor De Silva is good. His striking is decent. His grappling's okay, but I just think Andre Lima is flat out better than him on the feet. I think he carries more power in his hands. I think he lands a little bit more accurately. And some about really young guys, I just don't like. Like, he's a little bit too young for me to feel confident in him against a guy like Andre Lima. I think Andre Lima is going to land the better shots on Igor De Silva and hurt him often. I think Andre Lima is going to get himself a TKO win here over Igor De Silva in like round one or two. I think he just is too powerful. I think he lands better shots more consistently. And I think on the ground, I don't see a distinct advantage for Igor De Silva. Moving up, wow, this is how you know we have an absolute thrill right here at women's bantamweight. Montserrat Rendon versus Daria Zelenskova. Um, it's women's MMA, right? I always say this isn't betting advice. I don't give betting advice on this channel. Um, I would stay the fuck away from whatever this is. Uh, Daria Zelenskova is a minus 220 favorite, and I'm gonna pick her to win because I think she's okay. Her takedown defense is eh. And Montserrat Rendon is probably going to want to take her down and just lay on her and do nothing. Montserrat Rendon has 6 wins. All of them are by decision. So either we're going to get a very boring fight or perhaps a stoppage because Daria Zelenskova, majority of her wins are actually TKO finishes, which when you see that in women's MMA, that's generally a pretty good sign because most women's fighters don't have a lot of TKOs on their record. And if they do, generally that is a good thing. She has one loss on her record, and it was to I forget the lady's name, but she's in the UFC now. She won her debut. She's like 6-0. She's not too shabby. So losing to her, I don't rate too badly. But in this fight, I think Daria Zelenskova is going to be the much more powerful striker. I think she's going to land the better shots more consistently. I think she's the bigger woman. I don't see a way Montserrat Rendon really beats her, barring laying on top of her for 3 rounds. But Zelenskova does have the ability to scramble at least a little bit, and I haven't seen Montserrat Rendon have a really good level of like rolling with or floating with opponents who do try and scramble to their feet. So I think Daria Zelenskova is the side here. I think she's probably I don't know if she's gonna finish Montserrat Rendon, but I think she's gonna do enough damage on the feet to score herself rounds and win a decision over Montserrat Rendon. Also, a thing I think should be mentioned is Montserrat Rendon is also much older, 35 versus 28 years old. So yeah, I'm going to go with the younger, more powerful, dynamic striker and Daria Zelenskova. But once again, it's women's MMA. It's subject to a little bit of trolling, so who knows for sure. Who the fuck is this? The fuck is this? I don't think this fight's happening. I've done no tape on this. I didn't think that was a thing. So we're gonna jump up to fucking Jarno Aarons and Steve Mugen. Um, this fight is interesting. I don't think Jarno Aarons is that terrible of a fighter, but when you look at his stats here on ESPN, you see that he has 1.67 significant strikes landed per minute. His pace and his volume, he just doesn't really put it out there. And I think that's going to hurt him because Steven Mugen, he has very nice boxing. He throws long combinations. He's not afraid to get into the pocket and exchange. He's got a decent shin. He puts a real pace on people on the feet. I think the only way Jarno Aarons wins this fight is maybe he can catch Steven Mugen, but he doesn't really throw enough shots, I think, to really catch him clean. I think he must implement some of his grappling because I don't think Mugen has very good. By the way, I know his name's pronounced Gwyn. I'm just calling him Mugen because it's funny. Uh, I think Jarno Aarons needs to grapple. Here, I think on the feet it's going to be a wash. Just because of the amount of strikes getting put out there by Steven. I think he cracks hard. He's got good power. He was able to finish AJ Cunningham with strikes to the face, which is impressive. Ludovic Klein realized very quickly that AJ Cunningham really wasn't taking much damage from strikes to the head, so he had to finish him to the body. So I actually rate a finish due to head strikes for Steven Mugen here. I just think he's the more powerful striker. I think he'll probably be able to keep this fight on the feet. Jarno Aarons' grappling is decent, but he hasn't really shown a large propensity to do it very often. I'm trusting my dude Steven here. He's also had 3 Contender Series fights, so he has experience against pretty decent guys about to break into the UFC. He's won 2, lost 1. I'm gonna go with Steven Gwyn here. I think he's gonna finish Jarno Aarons in like rounds 2 or 3. Too much volume, too much power, and not enough coming back at him from Jarno Aarons, unless something uncharacteristic happens and he ends up throwing a ton of shots. But I don't see that really happening. Moving up to bantamweight, Miles Johns versus Cody Gibson. This is an interesting fight. They have Miles Johns as a slight favorite. I don't think I'm going to go with Miles Johns. I think I'm going with Cody Gibson here. Miles Johns, he's a good fighter, but the one thing that it troubles me is his gas tank. He has bad cardio issues. He didn't have bad cardio issues against Dan Argueta. Funnily enough, he also popped for uh some funny supplements. Uh so I don't think he's going to be on those funny supplements this fight. Uh but he has bad cardio issues. From my understanding, he's taking this fight against Cody Gibson on short notice. So short notice, cardio problems, and Cody Gibson is a guy who has cardio. This man can go a hard 3 rounds without stopping. He puts a lot of output out there. He's pretty goddamn well rounded. He went to an absolute war with Brad Katana, which hasn't aged as well because Brad Katana lost to Garrett Armfield, but you know, this sport is a joke. Uh, Cody Gibson, I think, is pretty good. Now, the only threat is Miles Johns. Like in the first round and a half, it's going to be scary. Miles Johns has power in his hands, and he has some pretty good takedowns. But Cody Gibson is very, very big for bantamweight. I think Miles Johns is going to struggle a little bit landing a clean overhand or looping shot, which is predominantly what he throws to deliver his power on a guy who's much bigger than him and Cody Gibson. Cody Gibson also has a pretty large reach advantage. He is the older guy at 36, and I don't like taking older guys that much, but I there's a lot of red flags for me with Miles Johns coming into this fight with his bad cardio, short notice. It's a recipe I think for Cody Gibson to extend this fight into like the second and third rounds and really start to push a pace on Miles Johns and crumple him in like the third round. I think I'm gonna go with Cody Gibson here. I'm gonna be a little bit bold. I'm gonna say Cody Gibson gives himself a round 3 TKO over Miles Johns. I think Miles Johns loses to exhaustion in this fight. But we'll see. Obviously, he can still catch him. But moving up to featherweight, Ricardo Ramos versus Julian Erosa. This is an interesting one. What do I have on my board? I don't even remember. I believe, yeah, I picked Ramos to win. And I still think Ramos is going to win. I have a bad habit of changing up picks that I think are going to win. I talk myself out of it like a fool. I think Ricardo Ramos is going to win. I think he's more dangerous early. I don't think Julian Erosa's chin is there anymore. He's been in too many wars. I think his chin's a little cooked. Ricardo Ramos, very good striking, very dangerous early, very dangerous spinning techniques. He's got good grappling as well. He's got good submission threats. I think Ricardo Ramos has looked better against better competition as well recently. I know he got subbed by Charles Jourdain, but outside of that, I think Ricardo Ramos has looked pretty good in a lot of his fights lately. Julian Erosa, he's been KO'd twice in the first round lately. He got head kick KO'd brutally by Alex Caceres, and then Fernando Padilla, a little bit of like a flash KO. He wasn't like out cold, but he got stopped again. I don't think the chin is there anymore. And I mean, Steven Peterson gave Julian Erosa hell. So I don't know. I've got to trust in Ricardo Ramos here. I just think he's better at this stage in his career. I think he's going to land shots that are going to affect Julian Erosa more than Julian Erosa is going to land shots that affect Ricardo Ramos. And if this gets into the ground, Julian Erosa is pretty good at grappling. He's got decent jiu-jitsu skills and stuff like that. I don't think it's going to be enough to stop Ricardo Ramos from maybe sinking in a choke. So yeah, I'm going to go with Ricardo Ramos. I think he's going to TKO Julian Erosa in like rounds 1 or 2. Closing out the prelims, Kurt Holobaugh, Trey Ogden. This is a fight I've gone back and forth on because I don't mind the underdog here and Kurt Holobaugh. I am going with Trey Ogden for a couple of reasons. Um, Trey Ogden, he hasn't looked too shabby in his last few fights. I know Nicholas Mata is not a world beater, but he did just win his last fight, Nicholas Mata did, and Trey Ogden was destroying Nicholas Mata. Trey Ogden pretty much showed a little bit of levels to Daniel Zellhuber. He lost to Ignacio Bahamondes, which I think Bahamondes is a decent fighter. I think I would favor Bahamondes over like Kurt Holobaugh. So Trey Ogden, he's been looking good recently. I think his striking has come along a little bit. He's got a very nice jab. He worked it very well against Nicholas Mata in their fight. I think he's going to be able to do that again against Kurt Holobaugh. Now, I think Kurt Holobaugh has better boxing than a Nicholas Mata, but I don't think he has more power than Nicholas Mata. I think Trey Ogden, he has this weird ability to slow down fights a lot to the pace he wants them to be at by using his footwork and sticking behind his jab. And I think that's going to be the story of this fight. Now, obviously, it's a fight. It's subject to fucking change, obviously. But I think Trey Ogden's going to be able to skirt around on the outside, land his jab at will on Kurt Holloway. And I think he's going to slow down the fight enough to where he can bank some rounds and get himself a decision win here over Kurt Holloway. I am going to explain why I think Kurt Holloway has a decent chance of winning this fight as well. I think Kurt Holloway has nice boxing. I think he's got nice takedowns. I think he's got really good jiu-jitsu, but so does Trey Ogden. Trey Ogden has got quite a few chokes on his record. So I think if it gets to the ground, I think it could be a 50-50 as to who could potentially sub who. I think they're both pretty Steven on the ground. Um, and he's got some power too, Kurt Holloway. He's got nice boxing. He's got good power. So I see some value on Kurt Holloway as an underdog. Like I said, not betting advice. It's not. But I'm going to go with Trey Ogden here. I think he's going to slow down the fight. I think he's going to work his jab really well. And I think on the ground, in the grappling, I think it'll be relatively even. I think I'm going to go with a Trey Ogden decision here over Kurt Holloway. Mm. Hello? There we go. Jesus, I am brain dead. Okay, jumping up to the main card, moving up to featherweight, Fernando Padilla versus Luis Puello. This fight, man, is one I have gone back and forth on a little bit. Uh, this is another one where I think I don't mind the underdog pick here if you go with it. I'm gonna be going with Fernando Padilla here because I think overall, over 15 minutes of fighting, I think Fernando Padilla has the better game than Luis Puello. I think he's a more dynamic striker. My thing is though, the Kyle Nelson fight did not inspire me with a tremendous amount of confidence in Fernando Padilla. That's why there's a little bit of hesitation with me picking him. He didn't look great against Kyle Nelson, but he's a really young fighter. He was pretty green in the UFC, at least. He's 27. I think he's going to make the gains to his game after that fight to allow himself to beat a guy like Luis Puello here. Luis Puello is a guy with very nasty hands, very nasty boxer. He walks forward a lot. He will walk you down. He is not scared of getting in the pocket and trading with you. But I think that might actually play into Fernando Padilla's game. All he needs to do is circle out and land shots on the outside because he has a 6.5 inch reach advantage. He's a much taller guy. He's a much rangier guy. I think on the ground, I don't think either guy really has an advantage. However, if somebody's going to sink in a choke, I think it's going to be Fernando Padilla here over Luis Puello. Luis Puello really hasn't shown me a ton of grappling acumen or anything that makes me think that he can take down Fernando Padilla or submit him. And I feel like recently we've seen this fight play out, um, but just at a higher level. Like when I look at this fight, I see Daniel Zellhuber and Francisco Prado, right? You guys see it too. Like this is what I see when I look at this fight. And as somebody who picked Francisco Prado in that fight, will I make the same mistake twice? I don't think so. Now, I don't think Fernando Padilla is as good as Daniel Zellhuber, and I don't think Luis Puello is as good as Francisco Prado, but I just see the parallels in this fight, and I think the fight plays out in a similar way with Fernando Padilla staying on the outside and landing shots in on Luis Puello as he walks into range, blocking him with his face, just trying to land one big one. And I don't think it's going to work. I think Fernando Padilla is going to win this fight by decision over Luis Puello here. Luis Puello is a good underdog, though. He's got big pop in his shots. He's got nasty boxing, like I said, and he'll walk him down the entire time. So there's value there. But the pick is Fernando Padilla here, I think by decision. But we'll see, though. This is a fight I'm actually kind of interested in watching, just to see the level of these guys. Moving up to featherweight, Billy Quarantillo versus Yusuf Zalal. Fellas, I got another underdog for you. I'm going with Yusuf Zalal here over Billy Quarantillo. Um, Yusuf Zalal has been kind of hit and miss in his UFC career, but I think recently, he's a young guy right now, 27 years old. I think he's coming on a little bit. I think he's looked good recently. Uh, and I think Billy Quarantillo's looked shit recently. Um, Going to a decision with Damon Jackson doesn't really impress me very much. He got flatline KO'd by Edson Barboza. I think on the feet, I think Yusuf Zalal is just a more dangerous striker. He throws straight punches very well. He's got good pop in his shots, and Billy Quarantillo's stand up generally is just very slow. Um, it starts to look better once he extends guys into like the later rounds once they start to gas out because Billy Quarantillo weaponizes his pace and his cardio very well, but he telegraphs his strikes pretty well, and he telegraphs his takedowns pretty well. That's how he got knocked out by Edson Barboza. I think Yusuf Zalal may even have a grappling advantage here over Billy Quarantillo. And I think as far as threat on the feet goes, I think Yusuf Zalal throws the straighter punches. I think he throws them better. I think he's faster on the feet. I think I'm just going to go with the dog here with Yusuf Zalal. I like Billy Quarantillo, but I think at this point in his career, Billy Q's been in a ton of wars. He's taken a ton of damage. He's 35 at a lightweight class. He's not getting any younger. I think Yusuf Zalal's coming up, and I think Billy Q is coming down a little bit. But we'll see though. Obviously, we'll see this Saturday. But I'm gonna go with Yusuf Zalal here. I think he might actually get a TKO over Billy Quarantillo in like rounds 1 or 2. I really do think that. Oh boy, this is the fight I've gone back and forth on the most on this card. I feel like this, like if you're like an MMA fan, like an MMA fan, this is your main event for this card. Peyton Talbot versus Cameron Simon. Man, I have Simon on the board. So on like Monday night when I was doing my tape, I picked I picked Simon. And I've gone back and forth on this one in my head a lot. But I'm trusting myself. I'm trusting my past self this time. I'm going to go with Cameron Simon. And if you look, you direct your eyes, kicks with an arrow is written next to Cameron Simon here. Payne Talbot is a guy who, kind of like Billy Q, weaponizes his pace and his pressure over time to crack guys in the later rounds. When you have a guy, and he has a lead chin, Peyton Talbot, he's taking some shots and just like rub them off completely. Just doesn't feel them, doesn't react, nothing. So what do you do when you have a guy who just walks forward? Peyton Talbot's striking defense, I think, is bad. His hands are down. He's there to be hit, and he walks in a straight line at you. What do you do against a guy like that? Lead chin, hands down, there to be hit, walking towards you. You chop the leg and you kick him in the body. I think Cameron Simon has the fight IQ and the wherewithal to work the calf kicks on Peyton Talbot. I think he needs to go to the body early. And like the first round, I think he needs to do it often. Going to the head on Peyton Talbot is a mistake because I think Peyton Talbot's going to be there basically just waiting to counter Cameron Simon when they get into an extended boxing exchange. I think Cameron Simon must work his kicks, maybe throw in a high kick. I don't think it'll be very effective because Talbot's head is just apparently made of cinder blocks. But I think he can win this fight. I think he's got the fight IQ to win this fight. I also think Cameron Simon does possess the ability to take Peyton Talbot down. I don't know if Cameron Simon can really hold Peyton Talbot down because Peyton Talbot's he's a bit squirrely. He's a bit wily. He scrambles pretty well, but his takedown defense isn't great. Um, but I think on the ground, I think I give Cameron Simon an advantage over Peyton Talbot. I think Cameron Simon is going to edge out a decision here over Peyton Talbot. I think Cameron Simon's going to get ahead a little bit early in the fight, and like rounds 1, landing his calf kicks, landing his body kicks, and using his footwork to circle around the ring to bait Peyton Talbot into his shots. I think as the fight goes on, though, Peyton Talbot's going to get his reads and he's going to start to come alive. But I think by that point, it's going to be too far gone. And I think Cameron Simon's going to bake himself the first 2 rounds of this fight and beat Peyton Talbot, I think, by decision, a close decision here. That's what I'm thinking. I also think that there's a bit of line overcorrection on this fight. If Cameron Simon didn't lose that fight to Christian Rodriguez, where he cheated and missed by 5 pounds so he could fight a guy who's not in his weight class, Cameron Simon, I think, would be the favorite in this fight over Peyton Talbot like 10 out of 10 times if that fight never happened. Also, one thing I'm glad I brought that up because I remembered another reason I wanted to pick Cameron Simon. A lot of the guys Peyton Talbot fights, they crack and break in round 3 badly. That Christian Rodriguez fight, we saw Cameron Simon tired. We saw him extended late into the 3rd round in a pretty high-paced fight. Cameron Simon did not wilt. He was in there throwing strikes with high volume the entire time. Even when he was tired, he did not quit. So I think that's a good sign for going into a fight with a guy who breaks a lot of guys in round three. That Cameron Simon didn't wilt at all, really, in the Christian Rodriguez fight. So yeah, that's another reason why I'm going with Simon. Plus, I like the kid. You know, Peyton Talbot loses this fight to Cameron Simon by decision. Edmund Shabazian and AJ Dobson. Um, I'm gonna go with Edmund Shabazian. Oh, I don't like it, but I'm going to. I think AJ Dobson's a decent underdog here as well. He's in a decent spot. Edmund Shabazian, he's really good for like the first round. But AJ Dobson, my thing is, I don't know if AJ Dobson's really going to push the pace on the feet to really gas out Edmund Shabazian. I think AJ Dobson must wrestle if he wants to win this fight. He must extend Edmund into like rounds 2 and 3. I'm not sure he's going to be able to do that. And I feel like this is an easier matchup for Shabazian than he's really been given. Uh, throughout his career. I'll even click on his profile to show you what I mean. Like AJ Dobson's not too bad, but when you look at the fights of Edmund Shabazian here, Nasruddin Imavov, Fluffy Hernandez, Jack Hermanson, Derek Brunson. You know what I mean? Like this, like these are hard guys for like a young kid coming into the UFC. You look at AJ Dobson though. Can we pull up his profile? 1 second. I normally don't pull up profiles like this, but Petrosian, L, Jacob Malkoon, L, and then who, and a performance that I didn't really like against Tafon and Chukwi. I think this fight is going to largely stay on the feet. And I think in a slower paced kickboxing match, I think I'm going to favor Edmund Shabazian. I think he's got more power. I think his shot selection is better. AJ Dobson likes to work a 1-2, and that's about it. Unless he pushes like a pretty frantic pace on Shabazian early, I don't think he's going to be able to tire out Shabazian as much as he would like to. I'm going to go with Shabazian here. I think he's going to get himself a TKO over AJ Dobson in like rounds 1 or 2. Because I see this fight as just a kickboxing contest, and I'm going to favor Shabazian in that at least early on in the fight for like the first couple of rounds, barring something big lands on him, you know? Moving up to the co-main event, Carl Williams versus Justin Tafa. Guys, I gotta go with Carl Williams. Justin Tafa, funny fat guy, big power in his hands, but we saw what happened last weekend when guys like this fight guys who can wrestle a little bit, right? We saw Carl Williams is a much bigger guy. He's a much more composed striker. He doesn't really overextend himself very much. And man, I mean, the grappling advantage is just there. It's just so apparent. Uh, I got to go with Carl Williams. I think he's going to be able to take down Justin Tafa at will. I think he's going to be able to stay out of range on the feet as well. He's a much bigger guy, much more reach. And I don't think he's going to leave himself there to be hit, really. He doesn't really do that. He doesn't exchange in the pocket for very long with guys. So he'll throw a 1-2, and that's about it. And maybe he'll set up a shot. Maybe he'll set up a single leg. And I think he'll get it over Justin Tafa. And I don't think he's going to be able to just get up. I got to go with Carl Williams here, man. I think he's going to win. I think he's probably going to win a decision here over Justin Tafa. I think he's going to extend him into the later rounds with his wrestling. And by like the late second and third round, I don't think Justin Tafa is going to have the energy to get up. Yeah, Carl Williams by decision here. And moving up to our main event at women's flyweight, Amanda Ribas versus Rose Namajunas. Guys, I gotta go with Rose Namajunas here. Amanda Ribas' first main event. I don't think Amanda Ribas is a world beater, in my opinion. Like, she's okay, but I feel like you need to be borderline champion level to beat Rose Namajunas. Like, Rose Namajunas had a close fight with Manon Firat recently. Now, Rose is obviously a head case. I said that in my breakdown of the Manon Firat fight. I don't know which version of Rose is going to show up. Rose showed up, broke her hand, I think, early, something like that, and competed really well with a lady who I think is way better than Amanda Ribas. Uh, she did lose the fight, but it was close, competitive, I'll say. I think Rose Namajunas is a better striker easily than Amanda Ribas. I think on the ground, I think Ribas has a better submission offense. But Rose Namajunas, as far as wrestling goes, I think is better than Amanda Ribas. Rose was able to take down Zhang Weili in their second fight pretty much at will and control her there. I think Rose Namajunas is better everywhere except jiu-jitsu, but I don't really think Amanda Ribas is going to be able to implement that very well. I think Rose Namajunas is just going to school her on the feet and TKO her in like round 3. I just think she's a level above. Even if she is a head case and doesn't really come in 100% all the time, I think she's levels above Amanda Ribas, and I would be shocked if Amanda Ribas wins this fight. Uh, to be honest. But yeah, that's it for this one, boys. Hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Subscribe, I'll write your name on the board. Leave a comment saying, hey, Luke, I subbed. And you can go on the board like my dude Jonathan Davila. But yeah, there should be another video out this week. I'm going to start doing just more MMA content in general instead of just the prediction videos, just yapping. Maybe like another tier list or something because that was so well received. But yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.